Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with more news on this Monday. And man, oh man, there's always some sort of drama in the AEW locker room. And more news broke today pertaining to drama with Britt Baker. Britt Baker may be finished with AEW, as it is reportedly being stated that Tony Khan is fed up with the doctor. We will go over all of the latest information in regards to this situation right here on Off the Script. Also, Jordynne Grace finished up with Impact Wrestling last night, one-on-one against Tessa Blanchard. She is now on her way to the WWE with an appearance in the Royal Rumble, more than likely. AEW also has discussed moving Double or Nothing away from Las Vegas. And both Buddy Matthews and Brody King file for new trademarks life after the House of Black and Malachi Black. All this, plus so much more on today's Off the Script. We'll start with the good doctor, my friend Britt Baker. Britt Baker may be done with AEW. Tony Khan is reportedly, quote-unquote, fed up with Britt Baker. Baker was last seen in action when she beat Penelope Ford in a singles match on November 11th. That was an episode of Dynamite. After the match, she had a stare down with Serena Deeb, who came out and waved her Deeb's Wrestling or Deeb's Dojo flag. And Britt Baker audibly, as the camera by ringside was on her, right in her face, Britt uttered the words, "Nobody cares, nobody cares." She, at that point, and still even to this day, is factually correct. Now, this caused fans to think that they would feud before the storyline was completely dropped. She returned at Forbidden Door after a long hiatus from TV due to her dealing with a medical issue. Wade Keller of the PW Torch reports that Baker may be done completely with AEW, as people in the promotion think she is in the same boat as Miro, Ray Phoenix, Ricky Starks, Wardlow, and others not being used by the promotion. For those names mentioned, aside from Baker, the belief is that they're WWE bound when their deals are up with AEW. Now, this is coming from Wade Keller of the PW Torch. Wade Keller reports that Baker is frustrated with her spot in AEW, and AEW is frustrated, or fed up in this case, Tony Khan is, with Britt Baker, and she is wildly unpopular in the women's locker room. She previously had a locker room incident with MJF after she reportedly talked bad about him to other talent, leading to a confrontation. Nobody knows what exactly happened. Britt says one thing, MJF says another thing, MJF's fiance says something else. I don't know what. Frankly, I don't even give a shit. Just put on good television. I don't give a fuck if you like this one or like that one, hate this one, hate that. Just put on good television. That's all I care about. The rumor that AEW is not using her because of her breakup with Adam Cole is untrue. The belief is that AEW CEO Tony Khan is fed up enough that he's not using her, and should that change, she will get the call. It was added that Baker is not expected back on TV imminently. Now, Wade Keller says this, and I quote, "People have been wondering where Britt Baker is. She might be done with AEW, at least the feeling I'm getting from talking to people within AEW is Tony Khan might have her in the same category as some other wrestlers, where they just don't get phone calls and don't get called in to show up. There's a lot of frustration with her, I'm told, and I've heard this pretty consistently. She's wildly unpopular in the women's locker room. One person said no one ever wants to see her back, speaking of the women's locker room. Now, that is a bold, broad statement. I could imagine somebody on social media going, I am a woman in AEW and I want her back. Okay, says Wade Keller, fair enough. But I'm just telling you, somebody's perception is nobody wants her back. Probably Thunder Rosa. That's how bad it is. Somebody's willing to tell me there was an incident with her with MJF, and I'm told that factors into her being off television. But there are other issues with her that have come up. She's become increasingly difficult to work with in a general sense. She has always had a reputation for being difficult to work with. There was a specific situation recently, and not counting the MJF situation, where people just threw their hands up. And I don't know a lot of details on it, but I was told. You don't know the details on it. People threw their hands up and said she's difficult to work with nobody knows what the situation is. Yeah, that's really great journalism by the fucking Torch. How am I supposed to go? How's anybody supposed to go off of something like that? So that's what he said. A little bit. But where it was sort of, maybe it wasn't like a huge deal, but it was enough to be the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of just feeling like, you know what? We've got a strong women's division now compared to when Britt was on top, and we don't need to deal with Britt. She's going to be this difficult to work with, and if that's so, then that's where they are with her. I am told the Adam Cole situation is not a factor into what's going on here, and there's no heat on her for Adam Cole or Adam Cole on her. He has nothing to do with her not being on TV, even though they were in a relationship. And then, as of last reports, they weren't. So that's not a factor. If it ever was, and ever was a factor, it's not now. Obviously, she has some stand-up moments in AEW and become a star and has been a centerpiece for that division. But even back then, I was hearing about her reputation and being wildly unpopular in certain circles and difficult to work with, and being fiercely territorial of her role in AEW in a way that just felt unsustainable. And from what I'm hearing, at least, the attitude right now at the moment, the belief is that Tony Khan is fed up enough and that he's going to focus his TV time on others. And I don't know what that means in terms of her pay or her contract. And it's possible eventually things will change. She'll make a phone call and apologize, or there'll be 5 major injuries on the women's roster and she's still under contract, and Tony will have to bring her back and say, we need you to come to television. Obviously, there are caveats to this, but at this point in asking around, looks like you should not expect to see her back imminently, and that is the context of why, end quote. We all know we're not stupid. Things get reported, things get blown out of proportion. You know, the MJF situation, the Thunder Rosa situation, and whatever else happened in between those two situations. If you were to ask me, do I believe that Britt Baker is a problem or has attitude problems in the locker room with other female talent, the answer would be yes. Do I think she was territorial at one point or another, depending on where she was on the roster, looking down on everybody else? Or if a new talent came on in, she asserted her dominance in the locker room and her dominance in the division because she didn't want her spot taken. Welcome to professional wrestling. Welcome to anywhere you work, no matter what company you work for. Nobody wants their spot taken. Everybody is going to do everything in their power to keep that spot from going to someone else, no matter what the issue is. Wrestlers are a little bit different. Injuries happen, and at some point or another, you're going to have to succumb to those factors of becoming a professional wrestler. It is going to be up to you to show everybody that you belong at the top, even after injury or whatever happens, to come back and regain your spot as the top dog in the division. But do I think Britt had a problem backstage with others? Do I think she had an attitude problem? Do I think she was a nuisance? Sure, I do. Has nothing to do with Britt the woman. Britt Baker, who we see on television, is a completely different person than what we see in real life. There were issues with Britt Baker. Now, I will say, aside from that, there are issues with AEW. And when it comes to stories like this, it is easy for the mainstream media in the pro wrestling scene. It is easy for the journalists. It is easy for the dirt sheets to go and pick on Britt Baker because Britt Baker's not the one in their DMs. Britt Baker is not the one that is going to go out there and say what they have to say as far as the overall feel of AEW. Nobody gives a fuck what Britt Baker thinks, and Britt Baker is going to be the easiest of targets. Nobody in the community is going to target Tony Khan because I guarantee you some of the biggest journalists, some of the biggest dirt sheets in the community, they are in Tony's DMs. He's in their DMs, and there's rapport going back and forth. Tony needs all the good publicity that he could possibly get because of what AEW is doing right now and how bad they are doing right now. So it's easy to go and pick on Britt Baker. Nobody's going to target Tony Khan. Nobody's going to fault Tony Khan. Nobody's going to blame Tony Khan in any of this situation. They're going to blame Britt Baker. Now, I want you guys to go back to when Britt Baker came back in Forbidden Door. She started that program. First of all, she gave a great promo as to why she was out. It's like Britt Baker's back. The OG is back. We may get some sustainability in this division. We got a major name, some big matches that could happen with Britt, Mercedes, and Willow, and Jamie Hayter, and whoever else you want to throw out there. Statlander, whoever else you want to throw out there. Comes back in Forbidden Door, cuts the promo, tells us why she's out. We start building towards Mercedes and Britt at All In. Disaster. Complete disaster. After that first interaction with him, which was fucking great, then you get the MJF story that comes out in the locker room where she's saying this and saying this to his fiancée and went off on why they went 60 minutes, him and Ospreay at Dynamite 250, whatever the case may be. I don't give a shit. It happened. Something happened. It ruffled feathers. And it was not a good look for anybody. And it certainly fucked up the standing, and it fucked up the match and the build with Mercedes going into All In. We get to All In, the match was terrible. First of all, the match was terrible, and it went on in the wrong spot. And I'm assuming Mercedes needed to go on later in the show because it's what Mercedes wants, and it's what's best for Mercedes brand. So who are you going to, if you're Tony Khan, who are you going to look at? Mercedes? Who are you going to listen to? Mercedes or Britt Baker? You're going to listen to Mercedes, and you're going to shove Britt Baker, who's been there since day one, off to the side because Mercedes is your new, most expensive, shiniest new toy. The match should have went on where Tony and Mariah went on earlier in the show. Mariah and Tony should have went on after Ospreay and MJF because the story was there, the feud was there, the emotion was there to carry the crowd from one match to the next without having them lose as much steam. You're going to go from MJF and Will Ospreay, which was fucking hot, to a match that was dead before we even got into the building. So they fucked up right there. Mercedes and Britt should have went on earlier. They might have gotten the amount of heat that they thought they were going to get later in the show, earlier in the show. After that, we go and we get Britt Baker versus Serena Deeb on a random episode. It might have been the anniversary show of AEW Dynamite. I don't have the notes in front of me, but it was in October. She wrestled Serena Deeb. And then Britt Baker takes another month off. They bring her back to wrestle Penelope Ford, who at that time was the flavor of the month for AEW. And they're just throwing her out there for whatever reason. And Britt is getting some work for whatever reason. And then Deeb comes out at the end of the match with Penelope Ford and starts waving her Deeb Dojo flag. And then Britt goes on camera and says, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And that's legitimately the last time we've seen Britt Baker on AEW television. First of all, my question is, if Britt beat Serena Deeb in October, so this is the logic gaps that Mr. Will Washington seemingly overlooks. That's what they hired him for, right? Another fucking hack. If Britt Baker beat Serena Deeb, and Serena Deeb came out in November to wait for a flight, why didn't Serena Deeb cost Britt Baker the match with Penelope Ford to then kickstart a feud? I don't really understand what went wrong there. I don't understand it. Regardless of that, that's just one of the overwhelming problems with AEW. They don't really know what the fuck they're doing. The point of the matter is, Britt has been an issue. No doubt about it. But Tony Khan says he's fed up, or the report says Tony Khan is fed up with Britt Baker. Don't you think that is also how Britt Baker feels about Tony Khan? Because the one thing that I point to, the one thing that I think about is Britt sitting at home. Britt is watching what's happening on TV. Don't you think Britt is ready to abandon ship? Don't you think Britt, the way she's been outspoken in the past, don't you think she's had a conversation or two to Tony Khan to tell him how exactly she's really feeling about what's going on with her current status and what's going on with the division and what's going on with television. Don't you think that she spoke up in regards to what we have been seeing on week-to-week AEW television? I would be a betting man to say that absolutely did happen. What else is there for Tony Khan to be pissed off about or fed up with in regards to Britt Baker? It's January 20th. All In happened in September. And then we get the matches in October and November. You mean to tell me Tony Khan is now all of a sudden fed up with Britt Baker? For what reason? Because of the MJF situation that happened back in August? I doubt it. The Mercedes match with Britt Baker in London? I doubt it. The Serena Deeb situation? I doubt it. Now all of a sudden there are reports coming out that he's fed up. I don't believe that for a single fucking second. I don't. I honestly think it all comes down to one thing and one thing only. We all know Britt was a problem, but it comes down to Tony Khan being the problem. Don't you think fans are fed up with how Tony Khan is booking AEW? Don't you think fans are fed up with the current direction of AEW? Britt Baker's probably just uttering the same sentiments as the overall fan base towards the product. And that is not going to sit well with boss man Tony Khan, because he's always right and everybody else is always wrong. The fact of the matter is, Tony Khan, while Britt Baker was out and trying to get better and get back to TV and be the best version of herself and be welcomed back to the locker room as if she was the OG of this division, she came back. Toni Storm took off and running and was the hottest female act in the entire industry with Timeless Toni Storm. Mariah May was there, another shiny new toy for Tony Khan. Mercedes comes on in and is the highest paid female in the history of the business. Jamie Hayter's back. Doesn't really factor into much. If anything, she's right where Britt Baker is. Chris Statlander got more TV time. Had a couple matches with Mercedes that were really appreciated by the fan base. Willow took a nice run for herself. So on and so. Harley Cameron is coming along on television. Penelope Ford was showcased a little bit. At the end of the day, Tony Khan has so far moved on from Britt Baker, it's not even funny. The company outgrew Britt Baker. That's all it is. Tony was all mesmerized with his shiny new toys, and the need or the desire for Britt Baker, it was not there anymore. Both parties are to blame. The attitude for Britt Baker early in the day of AEW. Now you get this situation with MJF, and I'm sure what happened with Mercedes and whatever else happened or what was said while she was back, she probably voiced her concerns. Hey, I'm ready to go. Hey, I want to be used. Hey, I've been here. I broke my fucking body for you. Hey, I gave you everything I got. What do you got for me? Where you putting me? Let's do some business. And no business was to be had. You got to understand something about Tony Khan. He gets bored very easy. When his toys aren't really appealing anymore, he will put them in the toy chest and he will use them when he feels like he wants to use them. That's the problem that's happening here. Is Britt to blame? Sure. Is Tony to blame? Absolutely. You can go back and start blaming Tony Khan for being a failure of a leader, because if he was a true leader, none of these situations would have even made it to the dirt sheets, and none of these situations would have blown up in the manner that they blew up in. They would have been deaded almost immediately. I dare you to put Britt Baker in WWE and tell me if a situation or situations like this that happened in AEW would happen in WWE. The answer would be no. The answer would be no. Tony is mostly to blame for what is going on here because he's a failure of a leader and he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and the roster is so bloated that he doesn't even know who's employed or who needs to be at television anymore. That's another thing. How is Tony fed up with Britt Baker if I am positively certain she's not being flown into the TV shows if she doesn't have to be used? What is he fed up about? Go back to what I mentioned earlier. Is he fed up from what happened in August, September, October, November? We're going into February, bro. What is he upset about? Or is he that much of a bitch, a petty bitch, to hold a grudge for fucking 3 months after something happened? Move the fuck on. Your main priority should be booking how the show should be the very best it could be. Meanwhile, we're punishing this one. We're pulling Phoenix merchandise off shop. We're keeping Britt off television. Ricky Starks is fucking collecting dust on the fucking toy shelf. Meanwhile, we got the Learning Tree on television and the Death Riders are legitimately the death of AEW. I don't understand what we're doing. I really don't understand it. I'm going to say this in closing before we get to the next story. If Britt continues or has a desire to continue to want to wrestle, I think WWE would change her immediately. I do. She's not the best pro wrestler in the world. She's serviceable. She could still turn into something that we all hope she does. But that's where WWE comes in. Nobody wants to see you grow in AEW. Nobody wants to help you. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. Just look at the product. Look at the television show. They don't give a fuck about anything unless it appeases Tony Khan. That's it. The women's division, they got 7 women in the gauntlet, and the gauntlet lasted less than 10 minutes. That's how they feel about women's wrestling. That's the only example I need to throw at you. They don't care. They don't care. But if you take Britt from AEW and you put her in WWE, everybody thought CM Punk was going to explode and CM Punk was going to fucking fail in his second go-around in WWE. I guarantee you, if you take Britt Baker and put her in WWE, that woman is a fucking star. And I guarantee you, you will see a different Britt Baker than you've seen in the last 2-3 years in AEW. Guarantee it. So I hope that it happens. Now, I feel bad for everybody I mentioned, and including Britt. They got to wait their contract out because Tony's fucking Mr. Freeze. If Batman's ever looking to recreate the Mr. Freeze character, Tony Khan should be front and center. Number one priority to be given that role. He's Mr. Freeze when it comes to everybody. She's now frozen. So she's got to wait it out just like everybody else. But when that day comes, I could absolutely see Britt Baker succeeding in WWE. And all the naysayers said Punk should have been gone already. Punk is not only one of the biggest superstars in the fucking world when it comes to what we do, but he's had the biggest storyline, he's had the best match, and he's going on to WrestleMania to maybe challenge for the World Championship in the main event of WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas. So who the fuck is winning now? AEW, speaking of Vegas, AEW has discussed moving Double or Nothing away from Las Vegas. Fightful is reporting, as of last year, there was major discussion within AEW to have the Double or Nothing event away from Las Vegas. They were told WWE's WrestleMania 41, taking place just a month prior in Vegas, is factoring into the decision. AEW is unlikely to release its entire 2025 pay-per-view schedule as it did last year. The reason is that WWE is holding a house show in Orlando on the same night as World's End. AEW is not going to release their pay-per-view schedule because they don't want WWE blatantly stepping on their toes and interjecting themselves into the same weekend that they have for pay-per-view. So I don't blame them for that. Secondly, I don't blame them for moving. It has nothing to do with WrestleMania, nor should it have anything to do with WrestleMania. The product is dried up in the Vegas market. You've seen decreases year over year, lacking interest year over year by running the same show in the same city, in the same venue for 5 years. You did move All In from London after a second year, correct? And now you're bringing it to the United States at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas this year. So why don't you do the same thing for your other marquee event that you had in Vegas for the last 5 years? It is time to move on. There are casino-like cities. There are other atmospheres that give you that casino vibe that you could possibly book for Double or Nothing. It doesn't have to be Las Vegas. It doesn't. It doesn't have to be Vegas at all. I would be very appreciative if AEW moved Double or Nothing to a different market to put it in front of new fans, to put it in front of new eyes, to give it a new feel instead of going back to Vegas, because that's where the original was, and we got to stick to our morals and our throwbacks, and we got to have all these things because it happens every year. Traditions. No, we don't need that. Moving it would be the best thing for it. And I'm sure moving All In is going to be the best thing for it as well. You'll see. Jordynne Grace. She's expected to be WWE bound after finishing up with TNA last night at their Genesis pay-per-view, where she worked with Tessa Blanchard. Fightful reports most in the company expect her to be with WWE as her deal ended after last night's show. Gail King was said to be the producer of the match with Tessa. Grace has made past appearances for WWE, including a 2023 Royal Rumble match where she impressed WWE officials. She's also made sporadic appearances on NXT, and she fit like a glove. It has long been expected that she will head to WWE when she's free and clear of her TNA contract, with her deal being up this past weekend after Genesis and the Royal Rumble being on February 1st. It would allow her to be in the Women's Rumble match as a surprise. As Fightful already stated, she was already in the 2023 Royal Rumble match, where she actually lasted close to a half an hour in that match. Jordynne Grace will be in the Royal Rumble. Jordynne Grace will be factored into something big at WrestleMania, and Jordynne Grace is going to fit like a glove on the main roster of WWE television. That's all I have to say there. She's not going to NXT, nor should she make a round in NXT. The woman is ready for television, and the woman is needed on the main roster, and I can't wait to see what she produces come February. Very excited about what she's going to be doing with the WWE. Side note, I did not see the Tessa Blanchard match with Jordynne Grace. I heard great things about it. Some people were calling it already a match of the year candidate. I should go back and watch it. I'm a big fan of Tessa's work. I'm a big fan of Jordynne's work. I'm not surprised there. So after all that I heard, it's going to get me to check out the match regardless, because you got two top-tier female performers right there in the ring last night at Genesis. And we'll end with this. Buddy Matthews has filed to trademark Hellhounds. Buddy Matthews and Brody King appear to be rebranding their tag team following Malachi Black's AEW departure. Matthews, under his real name Matthew Adams, filed to trademark Hellhounds on January 17th, just 2 days after Brody King filed for Hounds of Hell. Brody King also filed for the term Cerberus. Don't know what that means, but Hounds of Hell or Hellhounds sounds like it could be a tag team name for both Buddy Matthews and Brody King if they do want to do some tag team work. The filing states that it's for advertising services, namely promoting the goods and services of others, organizing fairs for commercial and advertising purposes, providing a searchable website featuring the goods and services of other vendors, entertainment services, namely wrestling exhibitions and performances by a professional wrestler and entertainer. The duo, formerly part of the House of Black stable with Malachi Black, are slated to face the Gates of Agony on AEW Collision Homecoming. Great. Sounds super exciting. The trademark filings, coupled with their upcoming match, strongly suggest Matthews and King are forging ahead as a new rebranded tag team within AEW. Great. Now, if we can only get Tony Khan to start booking tag team wrestling the way that it was intended to be on AEW television, because right now they may have some of the worst tag team divisions or tag team division in all of the industry. It is a complete fucking mess. And after what they did with Private Party, I'm not holding out hope for any tag team to get where they need to be. And I'm not really holding out hope for Buddy Matthews and Brody King to be featured regularly on television. Another flavor of the month, no doubt about it. And they're only being used right now because they're building towards a show in Brisbane, Australia. And where's Buddy Matthews from? And after that is going to be a real focus. Will they use Buddy after the Australian show is over with? That's what I'm going to be paying attention to. He should. He's one of the best fucking pro wrestlers on the face of the planet, and Brody King has gotten over on his own and is someone the AEW fans want to see regularly. Does Tony know that? Of course he doesn't. Tony Khan is terrible at reading the fucking room. Good for them, though. If they have any life after Malachi, I hope it's a more successful one than we've seen with the House of Black. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you very much. Happy to be back with you after a long weekend off. If you did enjoy the video, leave me a comment down below, hit that thumbs up, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. All this helps us out in the YouTube algorithm. Follow me on social media at JD from NY206, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Cameo. Make sure you guys, like I said, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell for all notifications, and go check out all last week's content. We got a brand new week of content coming up this week, starting tonight with Monday Night Raw live on Netflix. I'll be live after the show is over with the official review right here on Off the Script. I'll see you guys later.